It's finding a balance between your creative side and life.
Yeah.
It can't be 24/7 creativity.
Yeah.
You need to do something else. You need to, it could still be in a creative sense. Like if you're like, I teach drums as well. When I'm on my downtime, I'll do recordings, session stuff, as well when I'm home. But also I like learning. I like reading. I like, history is also very, interesting to me. So I like learning about that and just finding something else to keep you occupied, or even get a job, learn how to fly a plane or something, you know, like find something else that can keep you busy and keep your mind active and productive. So when you go back to playing your music, you're in a positive state and you're ready to create again and do your thing, because it can also be very damaging if you don't. Say you spend all this time not doing anything, your mind's going all over the place, and then you come back to being creative or touring or whatever, doing with music, but you don't have that confidence anymore, or you don't have that, oh my God, this is going to be great.
Yeah.
Even though this is something you love to do, it's just so hard to bounce back into it if you're not already in a positive state of mind.
Yeah.
If you're in a negative state of mind, getting out of negativity is really hard.
Welcome to the Vocal Lab. I'm Sarah Ramsey, and this show aims to pull back the curtain on the entertainment industry, where veterans give up-and-coming artists some of the information they wish they'd had when they were just starting out. Sort of a music industry primer, if you will. I am so glad you're back with us today. And here's the thing. This is part 2 of our interview. So if you haven't checked out part 1 yet, go back and check that out, because there's a lot of groundwork for stuff that we might refer to today. You might want to watch it first. So check that out and then come back and join us, and let's get going. Do you find that there are any pieces of like just the realities of life on the road, things like, sleep cycles are shitty and all of that factors in for you because drumming is so physical that, I don't know, just is more front of mind for you?
In a way, I do like to sleep. Sleeping is a great part of my day.
Yes.
On the road, it's I try to stay as consistent as possible and have your certain routines before your shows and your sleep cycles. Keep them similar as best you can, just to keep some sort of, sanity, really. Like things are different every day. It's hard to kind of keep that in control, and it affects everything. It affects your sleep. It'll affect your day. It'll affect your appetite. It'll affect your performance.
Yeah.
So try keeping a similar routine, like your sleep cycles and, the things you do before the show and eating before the show and vice versa after the show. Try to keep them as similar as possible so there's no surprises. Surprises are the worst.
Yeah.
Especially when you're doing shows, you'll come to a place and there's a surprise, like, oh, there's no snare drum or something, oh, okay, great. Well, we'll work it out. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
We'll find something else. I know that's just an example. Usually there is a snare drum. I hope. But those little things will always affect you in some way, or oh my God, I got bad diarrhea before a show, and how am I going to do this? Or, try to keep those things, as far away as possible. But it happens.
Yeah.
But ultimately, you still gotta make the show. So go to the bathroom before the show and make sure you're all out, 100% clean, and then
find the Imodium
and take some Pepto and clear it all out, and then give your 120%. Deal with the consequences after.
There's a possibility I'm making this up, but I could swear that Josh has told me a story about Ian playing a show and like having the flu, and there literally being a puke bucket beside the kit, because
show must go on. But puke doesn't wait for anybody.
Puke
right?
doesn't wait for anybody. So there are moments where it's yeah, not fun.
No, sounds terrible.
So working on the road and playing, because you have played in front of, I'm guessing, some very large audiences with Carly in particular. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you manage nerves or whatever comes up that way? Like, there are differences between playing on a small stage and playing on a big stage, and
huge.
You have to learn how to manage those, right?
Yeah,
and have it not come out in the
right. For me, again, it's preparation.
Yeah,
I have to make sure I'm prepared for a show, and that takes 80% of the nerves away, because you're confident enough that you know the songs, you know the performance, you know what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
But then again, there's hundreds of thousands of people screaming at you.
Yeah.
And you got to get over that. Like, I guess it's a little bit easier for me because I'm not like front and center, but I'm heard.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure my parts are correct and I'm playing properly and entertaining and whatnot. So preparation is huge. The differences between playing smaller shows and large festivals, I guess, or ultimately it's a lot more terrifying playing smaller shows than, or not terrifying, but there's more nerves involved.
Yeah.
Because you're playing a small stage and you can
see the audience.
You can see what color teeth they have, or their eyes, or if there's a hair out of sticking out somewhere from somebody standing like 2 feet in front of you.
Yeah.
Where you're playing on a festival stage and the closest person to you is 50 feet away. Yeah. So it's a lot less scary, I guess you can say. You see a sea of people, so it's basically one entity. So
yeah.
But when you're playing a small stage, there's 10 people that are looking right at you.
Yep.
And that's when you really you really want to make sure that everything is going fine, because they can hear and see everything that's happening really, really clearly.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's, for me, playing at bigger shows is a lot easier. Obviously, I've had a lot of experience doing it now too, and kind of figured that out.
Yeah.
I guess my first show playing a giant festivals was terrifying and exhilarating at the same time, because of the screaming and the energy that the crowd provides from a large show is unfathomable. You can't, you don't know it unless you experience it. It's crazy how they can lift you up just by their energy that they give you. Same goes for smaller shows, but different energy level, you know? But yeah, large shows, when there's thousands of people screaming and, feeling the energy, singing all the song, all the lyrics, and it just makes it huge. It's crazy the way you feel, and it helps with your performance. You feel that much more confident. You feel that much more, let me try this here, obviously I practiced this here before, but sometimes you don't put everything that you do in your show until you're 100% sure that you can pull it off. But whatever, sometimes it just happens. Sometimes you don't think. Well, that's a good thing about drumming. It's not a lot of thinking involved when you're playing. You're ready. If you start thinking, you're too late. You're missing something.
More instinctual than that.
Yeah, it has to be more instinct, because you're keeping time and things happen right then and right now. There's no past, there's no future. It's just now. So a lot of things just happen. Like some things I'll play and I'm like, oh, okay. Didn't expect that, but it turns out whatever. But your hands and feet are doing things at the same time, or like at opposite times. It's a crazy process when you're playing a drum kit. So yeah, some things just happen sometimes, for better or for worse.
So much independence. I mean, I have sat at a drum kit before. When I was a kid, we because we had a studio at our house, like the garage for kinda was turned into a studio at our house growing up, and we babysat somebody's drum kit for a couple of years while she was traveling. An engineer that my dad knew. And so I got to, as a young teenager, I got to play drums. I was terrible at it. But it made me understand how much independence is required to play that instrument more than any other single instrument.
Yeah, it was an evolution. ultimately drums were all played separately. Like when you play a saxophone, one person plays the sax. For drums before, it was, one person would play the snare drum, the other person would play the bass drum, but like on a stand. All these different drums are separated. Cymbals are separated by individual performers. And then it takes guys like Gene Krupa or Louis Bellson to bring all these different drums together, and you play it as a unit. So one person's playing all these things. So all these different. That's where groove kind of started coming out, where people would be playing all multiple drums at the same time with their feet and their hands. And, it was like, it's crazy how this thing, so it was an interesting time, I guess, when the drum set was being developed as its own instrument rather than just individual drums. So drummers became a really, a crazy novelty where people would watch these drummers like Buddy Rich or whatever. Like, guy's insane. Like the things he can do with his hands and his feet all at the same time at 100 miles an hour. It's insane. And it's to watch, like not even just for drummer, for anybody. It's so entertaining to see how fluid this guy can do, what these guys can do with all these different instruments around them, but just one person doing it. Yeah. Making this giant rhythmic ensemble by yourself, it's crazy.
Yeah. It's, it is crazy and impressively so.
Yeah, I love it. I love watching it. I love listening to it. I love doing it. It's drums. It's crazy. Yeah.
Can you talk a bit about studio life as a drummer?
Sure.
So speaking again, both to younger drummers, but also speaking to younger singers or artists, songwriters, even young engineers or producers, who might be working with a band for the first time or sidemen for the first time. What is important for folks to know about laying down drum tracks in the studio or communicating with drummers in the studio? What kind of things make that successful or present hurdles?
What things will make it successful is listening to the producer and or the artist and trying to get what they want out of your performance, and not trying to do everything that you can do just because you can do it. That's not the point. Live situations, things like, again, things happen now, and that's a different world in its own. But when you're recording, there's only so much space that you can that you have on the recording ability to record vocals, drums, guitars, keyboards, whatever, you name it. There's only a finite amount of space that can be presented through your speakers. So knowing to be simple and is probably the greatest thing you can do is knowing when to pull back and not to overplay, is when to know what specifically needs to be done to make the song sound and feel good, really. A zillion drummers can do a zillion different things, but if you can't replicate it on an audio recording and make it sound or feel good, then you're no good to anybody. Especially working with solo artists, it's usually the singer will be the solo artist. You need to leave space for them to have vocals. You're there to accompany the music, to support them, and knowing that, for one, is a huge thing. So you don't step on vocal parts or overplay in certain areas where they're trying to, the vocalist is trying to do, their little, your vocal trill, or your little cool little fills that a vocalist will do. And if you're like playing all this crazy stuff over top of that, that's not going to be good for anybody. So you need to know when not to play as well. And being consistent with your instrument. When you're recording, you want to be as consistent as possible. because that will translate it. When inconsistencies don't translate well,
Yeah.
this just doesn't sound good and doesn't feel good, and ultimately it's not going to work. I mean, that's going to be, you have to redo it.
Yeah.
Either with somebody else, or
Yeah.
and more times than not, that's usually the case.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll bring in some people, and ultimately it doesn't work out. They don't understand the artist or the producer's vision, and can't get their head out of their own ass. Really, is ultimately what it is. And then you just got to find somebody who can listen and get the job done.
Mm-hmm.
So just being open to other people's suggestions is really huge in the studio, because again, egos can take over, and then they can be your worst enemy.
Yeah.
Your ego can define if you're going to get another gig or not. So yeah, be open and consistent.
Yeah. And what about from the flip side? So if you were speaking to a younger singer or producer or engineer who needed to know how to best communicate with a drummer, what is useful information there for someone who might be new to that role? What's a good what tips or advice do you have in terms of giving clear communication that's useful for you on the receiving end?
Okay, well, I guess as a producer trying to communicate with a drummer, usually it's good if they have a good relationship. From before. It's always a little tense when they don't really, if you don't really know each other.
Yeah.
In a personal or some sort of personal way. So again, being open, trying to get everybody as comfortable as possible so they can do the best at their job. Really, if the producer would be like, ultimately, if you don't know each other, the producer could usually just kind of say, okay, let me hear what you think first. Here's the song. What do you think should happen? And then if the guy has ideas that are, good for the song, then that's great. But then sometimes, the best ideas aren't from the drummer.
Right.
So you need to find a way to help keep him calm and, keep his ego where it is. But try to communicate in a way just like, like this part try to explain to him why you want him to do a certain thing. Like this part, there's a piano thing that's going to do something here. So we need to find space for it. So you need to not do your 30-second note fill there,
Yeah.
And just kind of keep it in a way that it's, friendly, and you don't want to be too demanding on the artist too, because it's a stressful situation when, especially if you're recording and you're the only guy in the room and you have to perform, right?
Yeah.
So you want to keep the artists and everybody as calm as possible, and try to be a nice person. Again, demanding things from artists never works, because you demand anything from anybody, it's always like you're in fight or flight kind of mode, right?
Totally.
You don't want that sort of energy in a recording studio, because that's what you're going to hear when you record it. You're going to hear this tense situation that, obviously nobody knows that wasn't in the room that this was going on, but you will hear it. I mean, you will feel it.
You'll feel it.
Yeah, you'll feel it.
Yeah.
And that will come across on the recording. So you want to keep everybody calm.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for young drummers who are trying to carve a path for themselves in this business? What's the best way to get started and to start getting connected with people?
Again, it's like hanging out with musicians, going to shows, checking out bands. There's venues everywhere. You can look in the paper, live music. It could be a cover band that's playing at a bar, or it could be an original act that's playing at a bar. You will always learn or meet really cool people, because you all have, a common interest. You like music. You're a musician. some of these bands that you'll see or some of these musicians will just blow your mind. Like, you can walk into a room at, the local bar and there's this cover band playing and they are just on fire, like the singers are great. The band is just cooking. Like, it's crazy that what you can walk into not expecting things.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, you can walk into another bar where there's an original act. And you walk in and these guys are, they look cool. They got all the makeup and the hair, but they're terrible, but they look cool. So, but you can learn from that. Yeah. Or they just fly. And then you'll see over time that their career will actually take off. It's just being in that environment with these people, knowing these people and working with these people. Like, you can always offer things to other musicians. Like, people love when you say, hey, I would love to do this for you. And like, it makes them feel good about their art, people are actually interested in this, so if you can offer something to another artist, that's great for you and it's great for them. And that's how you build your reputation as a drummer. And like, another guy will be talking to a band that you work with and they'll be like, I'm trying to get my act together, but my drummer, he doesn't want to put in the time or whatever. And then the person that you worked for just say, screw that guy, call this guy. He'll get it done in like 10 minutes. Yeah. And for like not little money, but as little as possible, obviously everyone wants to get paid, but again, time is money. So if you can get stuff done really quickly for relatively inexpensive, you're already ahead of the game. Yeah. And it's that sort of thing. That's kind of what I've been, that's my career has kind of been based off that sort of thing. Hey, you know what? Don't even think about this. If you want to make a record and you want to do it professionally, you don't want some guy that I can only play on Tuesdays and doesn't rehearse the music and, does it for fun. Yeah, music is great. I love doing it for fun as well. Like, but when you're in a situation when people actually want to do more than just fun, you need to be either a part of it or you need to step away from it. Yeah. And it's annoying those people that's ultimately going to get you work. You find an artist that always needs a drummer. Hey, it's great. You can have a gig for life, right? Yeah. But open up your horizons. Going to shows, meeting musicians, and being in part of the community is huge. That's how you'll get noticed. That's how you'll be seen. You'll be heard. And then they'll come to your shows, these other musicians, and then they'll see you play, and they'll be like, oh, either man, this guy's awesome, or this guy's full of shit. Either way, you're building something that you're trying to do, right?
Yeah, for sure. Is there anything that you notice that you see missed about the industry or misunderstood about the industry?
Oh yeah, all the time. Yeah. It's a misunderstood industry. Yeah. Like, again, there's no school to say, hey, this is what you have to do to become or to work in music. There's no school. There's so many different avenues you can go in the music industry. You can be a musician, obviously. You can be an artist. You can be an engineer. You can be a producer, managers. There's so many different types of personalities that are required in this industry. Like, most bands don't have any idea, or most musicians don't have any idea what a manager does or even care. They just know that you need one because they can't even manage their own life. But then it's those personalities, the people like, that really love music, want to be part of the industry, but, have no musical skill or whatever. They find another avenue that they can be part of it. Being a manager, or being an agent, or being an audio engineer or producer or whatever. There's so many different avenues. What was the question again?
Just about people who are young and coming up and are still green enough that they don't know the ins and outs. Maybe they don't know the etiquette. Maybe they're, it could be for whatever reason, but are there things that you see that where they're missing the mark?
Yes.
They miss it, or they misunderstand something about the industry that's kind of crucial.
Again, it's ego. Ego is a huge thing. Your worst enemy. Yeah. If you can't keep it in check. Nothing wrong with ego. Ego is helpful. It has its place, but you need to know when to keep it in check. When you're talking to other musicians or other people in the industry, you can't just be going, floating your own boat about everything, and you've never made a record or something like that, and talking about how things are, like, say you're in a studio situation, and you're with an artist that's never made a record before, but he's trying to tell the engineer or the producer what needs to be done.
Yes.
Or doesn't like the way the producer or whatever, because he doesn't understand it. Yeah. But then he just shows it. It comes out in his ego.
Yeah.
And that's a huge problem. You can stop what you're doing right there if that's going to be the way you present yourself in that sort of situation. Keep your ego in check. That is the biggest thing. Be like a sponge, trying to learn as much as you can, because ultimately when you're in that environment, now you're in school. Don't talk during class. Listen, because this is the school you've chose to do.
That's right.
You want to be part of this industry. Learn about it. Don't think you know everything, because you don't. You don't know nothing. I don't know anything. Every day is a new thing. But I know more than you. So be open to suggestion from your peers and people that are actually doing this for a living in the industry. And keep your ego in check, and find a good accountant. That is very big.
Yes.
Especially when there's work from all different sorts of places. Good accountant.
And I would add to that you need a good accountant, and you need to understand enough about, like, business book accounting statements.
Right.
That you know what your accountant is telling you.
Right.
So you need to understand your profit and loss statement, your balance sheet. You need to know whether your accountant is screwing you or not.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Find a good accountant, because he will help you keep the tax man at bay, because they will always come looking for you. For some reason too, always musicians. They'll always come looking for musicians because their pay isn't consistent.
Yeah.
It's all over the place. So they always say, oh, that's weird. This guy doesn't work 9 to 5. Let's give him more taxes, like, I need a good accountant to help you navigate through that kind of mess.
Yeah. Nik, what is the most unexpected way that you have used your talents in the course of your career?
The most unexpected way. Wow.
Also a very open-ended question.
What's the most unexpected way I've used my talents in my career? I don't know. I don't know how to answer that.
All right.
It's always, I feel like it's always been something I did expect, I've always, I work towards something, and that's what I would expect. Yeah. Either it happens or it doesn't. An unexpected thing. Well, I never expected to travel to so many different places in the world, really. I guess I can say that. Mind you, I love to travel. I love to see the world, but it's not on a musician's salary. It's not like it's not like the easiest thing to do. Fortunately, Carly, who I play with, is an international artist, so we get to go everywhere.
Yeah,
and like places that I've never expected to be, like Dubai, like. Yeah, it's a cool place, but I never planned to go there, or South Africa, or China, or, Malaysia, like crazy places that just never expected to be, but ended up being there,
Yeah.
I guess that's kind of an unexpected little twist, a turn of events.
When you traveled all those places to play shows, how much, and I know it's not going to be the same every time, but sort of in general, how much time do you have to actually go and experience the places?
Well, again, it depends on the schedule of your tour and your willingness to actually go and explore. Really, sometimes it's sometimes you do have time, but again, flying takes a lot out of you, and so you either use that time to go explore or rest.
Yeah.
Sometimes, depending on where it is, like if it's like a bucket list place where it's like, oh, I gotta check this out, you'll make the time. You'll stay a little tired and you'll go make the time. Some places that you've been to a few times already, you kind of like, I've seen it before. I'll rest for a couple hours today. Yeah. But yeah, there's always, the world is a crazy place. There's so much difference, and and diversity everywhere, culturally, languages, everything. It's. I recommend it to everybody to go see the world for yourself, because there's no other education that you can get like that when you actually experience different parts of the world, different cultures, different languages, different people, different foods. Like facing it and experiencing it one-on-one is like no school like that.
Yeah.
It just makes you appreciate so much about the world and life and other people, and builds empathy, I think, and just to see how other people live and how they live, because Western society is a lot different than, let's say Japan or, China. Very different. But ultimately they function, in their way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's really cool to experience.
Weirdest gig? Best gig? Those are not, they're not necessarily the same question.
Yeah. Okay. Weirdest gig.
Weirdest gig that you're comfortable talking about? How about that?
Yeah. Let's see. I don't know. All gigs are usually kind of weird in their own way, in a good way, but nothing I can really think about that was so far off. Well, mind you, playing corporate shows is a little weird.
Yep.
Ultimately, it's a group of people that some people might know your music, some people might not, but they're all there because they work at a place that hired you to perform, to entertain their clientele, corporate gigs. Those are always kind of funny.
I've played a lot of corporate gigs, but I've always played them as a cover band, which I expect would be a much different experience than playing it as an original act.
It is. I've done corporate gigs with cover bands too, and it's a lot different because cover bands play music that most people will know.
Yeah, when you're going in and playing "I Will Survive" for the 80th time, like everybody knows it. Dancing Queen is going to put everybody on the dance floor. Those things are a given. I mean, Call Me Maybe probably puts everybody on the dance floor too.
Yeah,
but
it's a different spectrum of, like I said, there's some people that know like your music, and obviously not everyone's going to know because you're ultimately playing for a company that hired you to entertain their employees.
Yeah.
So those gigs are kind of interesting sometimes. It's a little bit not a lot of pressure too, because you're just like whatever, everyone's going to have fun and it'll be fine. Best gig that I played, best experience that I played musically, I guess was playing on SNL. That was kind of
oh wow,
that's something that just doesn't go away very fast.
Tell us about it. Come on.
Yeah, it was so surreal how it just kind of happened, and meeting Lorne Michaels and who was the host? It was Michael Keaton.
Yeah.
On that episode that we did, and just being in that environment and watching the actors and going through their skits and stuff like that, it was a surreal experience. Like that whole night after the show and after the performance in itself was so surreal. I was pretty nervous at that point too, but you kind of first couple bars of the song and you're like, okay, everything kind of comes back together. But yeah, it was crazy. It was such a high that entire night. I didn't sleep until like 6 a.m. Whatever.
Yeah.
Mind you, I wasn't drinking or partying or anything, but it was just this feeling of like, wow, I can't believe that we just played on Saturday Night Live, nothing like that. Yeah, it was pretty cool.
I have never had anything close to a Saturday Night Live experience, but I do think that is a thing that people don't necessarily understand about playing a show. I mean, even when I would just play like, whatever casino shows or a corporate gig or whatever, there is no chance in hell that I could leave the gig, drive home, and go straight to bed.
No, you're way too wired.
Wired and up, because you referred to it earlier, but when you play a show, like you're putting out so much energy, but you get so much back from the crowd provided the crowd's into it, granted. But you get so much back as well that it's like, it
doesn't just go away.
It doesn't deplete you, and it doesn't just go away. No, exactly. And you have to be on and up, and your job is to entertain. So you have to be up.
Yeah.
Right. And 2 a.m. comes or whatever and you're done, does not mean that your body is done. No. It takes a long time for that energy to wind come down.
Yeah, it sure does.
Yeah.
And that's usually my routine after a show. I will stay up till like the wee hours of the morning because I can't just go to sleep. It's just, I'm way too wired after, an hour and a half, 2 hours of performing. I need to slowly unwind, slowly come down, play some video games, and then eventually I'll go to sleep. But yeah, there's so much energy, like you said, that's being put out there, but also being received. And not just like live performances, but doing these TV shows like SNL, and we've done.
Did you guys do like the whole late night circuit?
Yeah, we've done Letterman. We did Jimmy Fallon when it was late night with Jimmy Fallon. Then we did the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. We did that a few times. Then we did Seth Meyers' Late Show, Kimmel.
Yeah.
Like I don't know what else is there. We did Ellen like a half a dozen times. It seemed like. Did Good Morning America a few times too. It's like crazy. But then again, the more you do it, then you start to see, okay, this is just our reality, really. Like it's no different than anybody else's job, so to speak, in relation to what people are doing. But this is our reality. We're here at 4 a.m. at Good Morning America studios, and we got to perform music while it's being videotaped and recorded for the masses. But it's 4 a.m., okay.
Yeah.
You got to get over these kind of things. But yeah, that just seems to be our reality for quite for the last decade, I guess.
Yeah.
Kind of a cool reality, but but it's cool to be on these shows and see how they work and see the similarities and see the differences between the different shows. But it's cool. It's nothing you can't experience it unless you experience it.
Yeah.
Yes. You don't know what it's going to be like unless you do it.
Yeah. Yep. In the course of your career, there's been a lot of collaboration, and I sort of alluded to it earlier, but I think we are in an industry that is perceived from the outside to be a very competitive industry. And it is. However, I think for the most part, like interpersonally inside the industry, we don't tend to be terribly competitive with one another. It's a much more collaborative vibe. That's been my experience anyway. Everybody's experience is different. So my question is, what has your experience been around that? And how do you think we can foster a collaborative, supportive community in the music industry?
We tend to be very friendly with each other and try to help each other. I think the more competitiveness comes to, who's selling the most records, or and it's not something you can really compete against. It's just something that you're putting out there, and then whoever wins. Like really, it's not like really a winner's game. It's just this is what's happening. Like how do you judge your success in especially in a creative community where people are just creating, they're just being creative. So like you said, there is a community that people will be helpful with one another, and over the years, I've run into like crazy artists and talked to them briefly, and they're just normal people. Obviously they're doing great, but they just talk like normal people, which is, I guess, kind of surprising in a way. But then realizing, I guess we're all just normal people, we're just doing what we do, and some people just happen to be on TV, and that's all.
Yeah.
So there is a kind of camaraderie, I guess, amongst musicians and artists that we can always find something to talk about in a room together and have some commonality. But yeah, again, the competition is really just like, it's kind of like an unseen competition. It's just like after everybody puts out their content or their creative medium, how does the public react? I guess that's the competition. Who gets the most attention from the public, or who you're trying to who you're selling your art to. But then that's just it's a personal thing. No one gets really pissed off about, oh, this guy sold this many records more than this guy. That's not how it goes. You know, there's not that kind of competition. Well, we'll get you next time. Or like, it's not like baseball or something. It's and it's very supportive. It's like, oh, that's great for them. You know, like, it's great for this person. It's great for this person. That's kind of how I see things are out there in the music industry there.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you think is really important for up and coming artists to know that we haven't talked about today?
What is important to know? Being an artist or in a creative industry is not always the easiest path. You need to be prepared to sacrifice things that you didn't think you would need to sacrifice. Be it money, be it relationships, you know, it could be anything. Every individual is different, you know, but there's a lot of sacrifice to be a creative person. But I guess that also builds your creativity. That's what makes you who you are. But be prepared for it. You know, you can't have all that cake and eat it all the time, you know. There's going to be low times, there's going to be high times, and it's trying to figure out that balance. That's very important, the balance. And if you're not prepared for that, it can really do damaging things to your brain. Mental illness can start arising from imbalance of your lifestyle. Because what I do is I go tour the world, I play music, it's awesome. Highs all the time, everything's good. And then you stop. And you don't wind down, you just stop. And then you have to find your balance. And if you don't have that balance, you will drive yourself mad.
I have talked to other artists who work in that same cycle where it's, you know, album release, tour, it's living life large, and then it's the downtime. And like they talk about the fact that the downtime is the hardest. And it's not because it's missing the accolades and the attention. And it's not that part of it. It's the boredom of the downtime. It's all the inner demons come up because I think it's another thing where I think the general public perceives musicians, you know, as the rock and roll lifestyle and you get to just party all the time. But that's not what life actually looks like behind the curtain.
No, not at all.
And those downtimes, like between album cycles, between touring cycles, you've got nothing to fill up your time with unless you create something to fill up your time with. But it's not like when you have a 9-to-5 job and you have scheduled weeks off per year. It's so
been
much
created
less,
for you.
So much less structured. And that's part of what creative people tend to love and can be the biggest hurdle of all.
Like I said, it's finding a balance between your creative side and life. It can't be 24/7 creativity. You need to find a balance. You need to do something else. You need to, it could still be in a creative sense. Like if you're like, I teach drums as well. When I'm on my downtime, I'll do recordings, session stuff, as well when I'm home. And, but also I like learning. I like reading. I like, you know, history is also very, interesting to me. So I like learning about that and just finding something else to keep you occupied, or even get a job, learn how to fly a plane or something, you know, like find something else that can keep you busy and keep your mind active and productive. So when you go back to playing your music, you're in a positive state and you're ready to create again and do your thing, because it can also be very damaging if you don't, because say you spend all this time not doing anything, your mind's going all over the place, and then you come back to being creative or touring or whatever, doing with music, but you don't have that confidence anymore, or you don't have that, oh my God, this is going to be great.
Yeah.
Even though this is something you love to do, it's just so hard to bounce back into it if you're not already in a positive state of mind.
Yeah.
If you're in a negative state of mind, getting out of negativity is really hard.
Well, and I also think that when you come in a negative state of mind, that creative process can act, instead of being something that's very fulfilling, it can be incredibly draining.
Yeah, mentally and physically. Yeah. I remember doing some tours a while ago, earlier on in my career, when I didn't understand all this stuff, where I was like, okay, I'm so excited to finally get on the road again or whatever, after like a long break or something. And then I get on the road and I'm not any happier, because my mind has been already poisoned by all the negativity that I had like months prior.
Yeah.
So thinking that I was going to jump back into it was not the right idea. It was, you need to have a consistent flow of positivity to be creative, Can't just jump back into it and hoping that everything's going to change again, because it doesn't. It takes work. It takes positivity.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd go on to a tour and thinking this is going to change my mental process, but it didn't. I was still pretty bummed out, and like, why am I bummed out? I should be, but it's the patterns that you create in your mind, right? Especially over time, if you're not doing something creative, that start to build, and they stay with you regardless if you start going back again. You gotta get rid of the negativity and try to be on the more positive side of things, rather than being bored and not occupying your mind with things that are productive. That'll ultimately keep you going. If you don't have that balance, it just doesn't work. Again, that's why they call it balance, I guess, right?
Yeah. And it's it takes awareness and effort to get there. Yeah.
Awareness for sure. Effort, yes. But for a young aspiring artist, musician that, is coming up with their band or with their solo project, there's ups and downs, but you need to be able to balance those ups and downs, to continue the struggle. Like, I've been in bands that couldn't do that, couldn't find the balance, and then things started to just fall apart on, multiple levels, different members of the band not doing things, and ultimately just crumbles because no one's on the same page anymore. No one's looking to do to follow the right process, or I guess I can't say right process, follow a process to help them continue their career. They all have these ideas in their head, rock star, I can do this. But you don't have, you're totally wrong.
Yeah.
It's just an idea that you have in your head, and it doesn't mean it's right. But unfortunately, that's what usually will, make the artists either stop doing that and do something else, or break up a band or whatever, like it's all about how everyone thinks together as a unit.
Yeah. Yep. I think it's an important perspective to have, especially as a young person coming into it. I think some degree of rose-colored glasses is helpful.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
But not entirely. I think you have to have I think it's helpful if you have a bit of a reality check about the industry that you're stepping into.
Yes.
Because it's
you're in an entertainment industry. You're performing. You're an actor. You got to be okay with that. It doesn't always have to be who you are deep down inside or whatever, and you're gushing out your feelings or whatever. You're a performer. You could be anybody you want. That's the greatest thing about it. I think you can come on stage and say whatever you want to the thousands of people, because you got a microphone and they will all listen to you. Yeah. And it's a great feeling, but it doesn't have to be real. Like you're entertaining,
I think this is actually another concept I talk to students about a lot. I think we all create as musical artists. I think that we all create, I always call them stage personas.
Yeah.
I've heard them called different things by different people, but that's the term I tend to use. But that sort of stage persona. And the singers that I work with, I talk about coming to that intentionally and like intentionally crafting that stage persona and making choices about what parts of yourself you want to give to that and what parts of yourself you want to keep from that just for yourself
to protect yourself
and your private life. Because if you give it all away, it's really, really, really draining.
Yeah, it could become overwhelming, especially if you're really famous and you're all over social media. Yeah. Everyone thinks they can have a part of you.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter who you are. You could be the biggest pop star in the world or the biggest actor or actress, but negative comments on the media about your personal life and stuff like that, it hurts anybody. It hurts everybody. I don't know why people feel like they have some sort of right to be pieces of shit on the internet.
That's a whole other podcast.
Yeah, it's weird when you're not face to face with somebody, how much more of a dick you can be to people on the internet is it boggles my mind. Yeah. I don't get it, but unfortunately that's part of our reality now. So yeah, protecting yourself. If you can make a persona for yourself, and this is what the people see, and this is what they get, but they don't know the real you. That's for you and your friends and your family. That's totally great. But if you can keep that and know that it's a persona, and then you just go out and then be this character, like I can be this guy, and I can say stupid things or whatever, and that's just what I do when I'm on stage. And I think it's a very healthy thing for artists to do as well. Again, to keep the balance in their life.
Yeah.
Because it's not 24/7 performance,
Yeah. And I think you can choose what parts of yourself to bring to that stage. Like I think we choose some of it ourselves to bring, but I think it's okay that it's not 100%.
Yeah, you can choose what you want to be real and what you want to be part of your character, Yeah. And I think that's a great thing you can do. Like, keep people always guessing or whatever.
But it also allows you to create this larger than life character person on stage that allows you to step into that separation and out.
And you can be in total control of this person. Yeah. That's the key.
Yeah.
Once you lose control of that person, it's a free for all.
Yeah.
And that can get, can be damaging, could be it could be good, it could be bad, but you don't want to lose that control. You want to be able to present what you want to present on stage.
Yeah.
And not be guided by what people say or this and that, or, my feelings got hurt because of this. Yeah. If you could take everything in stride and see that if people are commenting about you as your character or your performer, as a performer, then, you can live with it because, you're performing. Sure, there's critics everywhere about whatever. But once people start really digging into you as a person, and again, it doesn't matter who you are, you can be the president of the United States, you will feel that. Well, maybe not.
Well, I don't know.
The last couple of presidents, but, things are changing. But yeah, ultimately, you will feel that as a person if you are a person.
Yeah. Well, Nik, I appreciate you joining me so much today.
Thanks for having.
Fun conversation to have. And where can people find you? Your socials and all the things? I
kind of keep it low profile. I guess you can, if you want to contact me, you can always check out my Instagram. It's pretty easy. You can just DM me there.
Yeah. And we'll throw that in the show notes too.
Yeah. And it's just at Nik Pesut. Like I said, or like you said earlier, I do recording online. Like you can, anywhere around the world, you can send me a track and I'll listen to it and I will customize a performance to it. Again, 100% guarantee. If you don't like it, you don't have to use it, right? And that's the beauty of it. But if you do, we can work together again for other things. And it's a very simple process. I have a little studio I can work out of, so it keeps costs things cost effective.
Yeah.
Especially for musicians, you know, it's not always easy to find find money to pay for your art, but it can be done.
Yes, it can. Yes, it can indeed. And do you have any plans to head out on the road again soon, or?
Yeah, looks like the spring and summer are starting to fill up again with Carly. So we start going out again in May, I believe.
Yeah.
The beginning of May, and the summer is getting booked up. She's working on a new record right now, which she constantly does anyway. Even when she's not, when she is touring, she's always writing songs. You know, she'll write a zillion songs for each record, and then so yeah, she likes to stay busy. We all like to stay busy, and hopefully it'll be a good summer.
Right on. Well, thank you again for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks for having me.